Hello there. Welcome to this training program on effective supervision in school counseling. My name is Dr. Rakesh Maurya and I'm an assistant professor at the University of North Florida. I'm teaching supervised internship class here at UNF in a school counseling program. So that's briefly about me. I want to tell you that I really appreciate your contribution as a site supervisor to our school counseling program at UNF. So thank you for doing that. Why we need this supervision training for you to take? We need it because this training will help you learn effective strategies for offering supervision to your intern. Also, it's a KCRAP requirement too. KCRAP is a national accreditation body for counseling programs across the United States. Talking about the objective of this training program, first of all, this training will help you uh, have a roadmap of how to provide effective supervision to intern. We will also talk about various supervision models that counselors can use in their supervision. We will also have an overview of the requirements to begin a supervisory experience without being overwhelmed. So in this 1 hour training, we are going to learn about different supervision models. We are going to talk about best practices in supervision. And finally, you will have to take a survey to answer a few questions in terms of what you have learned out of this training program. All right, so let's begin. First of all, let me start with a question. What do you think is the most important variable or the most important factor that determine the success of a therapeutic encounter? Is it the qualities of a counselor? Do you think it is the therapeutic intervention that they are using? Is it the theoretical orientation of the counselor? Of all the factors that has been studied, the most important factor that determines the success of a therapeutic encounter is therapeutic alliance. Similarly, when we talk about supervision, supervisory alliance is the most critical factor. So what is supervisory alliance? Supervisory alliance refers to the quality of the professional relationship between supervisor and the supervisee. So this is really, really important for supervisors that you develop a strong alliance with your supervisor. In fact, that's why we call it a heart and soul of the supervision. So the question is how we can develop a strong supervisory alliance. First of all, the clarity of the roles. So when you start supervision, the first thing you need to do in the very first meeting, sit with your supervisee and try to understand the goals and tasks and the expectations in this relationship. So you share your expectation with the supervisee, and let the supervisee talk about their expectations and goals that they have in the mind that they want to do during the semester. So the role clarity is very, very important for you. Second thing you can do, as we see in person-centered approach, that it's very important to develop a conducive atmosphere in the supervision. So there should be trust, respect, openness in this relationship. So your focus should also be to create those core element of that lead to a trusting and open atmosphere relationship with your supervisee. Another thing that you should focus on is your supervisee's self-care, as there's a lot of research studies suggest that uh, a sup a counselor's effectiveness is directly proportional to their own self-care. So this is what our interns should learn from the very beginning, that to be an effective counselor, school counselor, it's very important that you take care of yourself. You have a plan for your own self-care. Uh, working as a school counselor, it's not an easy job. You have so many things to do and so many responsibilities and functions and deliveries to be done. So focusing on one self-care is very important, and it's very important to start ingraining this self-care approach in the very beginning. Continuous assessment of the alliance, supervisory alliance, is also very much important because uh, any relationship, uh, it's important that you assess it continuously so that you know when things are not going as per the plan, when the supervisees are not happy, you know it upfront so that you can, change your strategies. So what you can do as a supervisor is at the end of every session, you can just spend 5 minutes talking about how was the experience for the supervisee on that day. Uh, does the supervisee feel being heard, being given what they are looking for, the support they are seeking, the feedback they are seeking? So it's very important that we spend 5 to 10 minutes, not more than that, at the end of the session, talking about how is the experience of the supervisee. Uh, Another important thing that is important for building a strong alliance is understanding your supervisee's feedback processing style, and that's what I do. Uh, in your supervision, it's important to understand your supervisee's feedback processing style. We all know that feedback, when it is a positive feedback, it's easy, but when you have to deliver a critical feedback, it's important to know what is the processing style of your supervisee. Sometimes some supervisors might, if there is anything, tell me upfront what I need to do, what I need to work on, what are the things I'm not doing well. While some supervisors may not be comfortable being very upfront. So it's very important to understand what is the style of your supervisee, what is their feedback style. And let's keep this conversation further. So as a supervisor, you will be having weekly supervision session with your intern. And in that supervision meeting, you will be offering three kinds of feedback. So the first feedback, we call it like appreciation feedback, which is uh, all the things that the supervisee is doing great, all the things that the supervisor has done very successfully and you are happy about it. So obviously you want to communicate and you will talk about that. The second kind of feedback is called coaching feedback, which is like, they are doing something very nicely and you want to accelerate their learning. You want your supervisee to focus on certain topics or certain things, and you want them to focus their energy there. So it will be this whole discussion will be like a coaching feedback. And then finally, uh, the third kind of feedback is called evaluation feedback. Evaluation feedback is basically where we stand right now. Are we doing well? Is there anything that need improvisation? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Is there any concern that you want to bring it up? So evaluation is refers to that kind of feedback. Now, in every supervision session, you will include all these three components. You will talk about the things that your supervisor is doing great. You will make some planning, how they can improvise, how they can improve on certain things. And then you will also talk about certain evaluation, how they are doing on certain things and what improvements are needed. While it is easy to provide feedback, which is nice, positive, appreciatory feedback, or coaching feedback, sometimes it's tough to offer evaluatory feedback. Although in my career as a supervisor, I have I have mostly seen students very receptive to feedback, but sometimes it might be tough. So what are the challenges that you might come across as a supervisor, although it doesn't happen very often? So I call it three triggers that may block feedback process. Let's say you are offering critical feedback, and then your supervisee is like, instead of listening, instead of focusing on that feedback, he or she just become very defensive and reacts like, this is wrong, this is not me, what you are saying is not correct, it's not helpful. So instead of listening to your feedback, your supervisee may react like that. And how will you deal with that situation if a supervisor, instead of thinking about your feedback and responding, all of a sudden they become reactive and defensive? So first of all, uh, whenever it happens, I bring the topic of this therapeutic relationship, how we are doing in terms of supervisory alliance. And I also talk about the three components of a supervisory relationship, three components of the supervision feedback. So I talk about the affirmative feedback, the coaching feedback, and the evaluation feedback. So uh, when we talk in detail about it and how uh, we can make this supervision more effective from learning perspective, my supervisee really get that point, and it becomes easy for them to look at their blind spot, to really sit with that feedback and think about it and then have a conversation around it. um, I hope and I wish and I try my supervisee, rather than saying, "Oh, that's not me," it's not true. Whatever you are saying is completely wrong. Um, I want them to say like, "Okay, okay, that's what you think. Okay, tell me more about it. Provide me more context about this feedback. Although it's difficult for me to listen to it, but tell me more about it." And this is what I hope and I try when my supervisee, uh, instead of listening, instead of paying attention, they become defensive or they start reacting to that. Another trigger is, I call it relationship triggers. So relationship triggers is when, let's say I'm a supervisor and I'm offering a critical feedback to my supervisee, and my supervisee, instead of focusing on the feedback, he or she is more like, you know what, you are giving me this nasty feedback because you don't like me, because you don't trust me, because you treat me wrong way. So instead of focusing on the content of the feedback, the focus of the supervisee turns towards the relationship. And whenever this happens, it is an indication that as a supervisor, I need to work more on the supervisory alliance, because my supervisee doesn't trust me. My supervisee is skeptical about, how whether I really want the best for my supervisee or not. So this is really important. So what you do whenever you have a situation like that, first of all, you try to separate the relationship from the feedback, and then address each component, the relationship component, the relationship between the supervisor and supervisee, and the feedback separately. So when you invite the supervisee, talk about, why you think that you can't trust me, what should I do to ensure that uh, we improve our relationship. What are the things that I did that made you feel that way? So you have to address the relationship, and then you come to the content of the feedback. So when you address the feedback, the relationship piece appropriately, then the supervisor feels comfortable and they focus more on the feedback content. The third kind of triggers that may block feedback process is identity triggers. So identity triggers refers to a situation when a critical feedback is offered, the supervisee, uh, instead of focusing on the content of the feedback, they take the feedback on their own identity. Let's take an example. Let's say if I'm telling my supervisee that, you know what, you need to work on your case conceptualization skills because what you are doing is not good enough. You need to address it and then you talk in detail. Now, the feedback was on case conceptualization skill. What the supervisee heard was like, I'm not good enough. I'm not a good counselor. I'm doomed. They're going to throw me out of the program. So you say something, but what the supervisor hears is entirely different. It's all about his identity as a person. So this is, uh, as a supervisor, you need to address the internal schema that is filtering this feedback into something very different. So as a supervisor, you have to address this point that when you say that she needs to work on case conceptualization skills, what you mean by that? You don't mean that the supervisee is doomed. You don't mean that the supervisee is not a good person. You don't mean that the supervisee is not an effective counselor. So you have to sit with your supervisee and try to help them understand that feedback is this is what exactly it means, because the supervisee may interpret it very differently. So this is third kind of trigger that you may see it. So all the three triggers that I talked about, I want to tell all of you, it's not going to happen very often. You may rarely see some kind of situation. In my experience working with interns, our interns are very open. They want to learn, they are seeking feedback, they want to improvise, they want to improve their skills. However, you have to be very mindful of making sure that you develop a strong supervisory alliance. Whenever a supervisor fails to develop a strong supervisory alliance, then only one of these triggers may happen. Okay, let's switch gears and now talk about some best practices for effective supervision. First of all, let's talk about expectations, what we expect from our site supervisors. We expect that the supervision should be conducted once every week. It could be 45 minutes to 1 hour every week. There might be some holidays, or something like that. So whenever, if you meet your supervisee, let's say on every Monday, and let's say if there is a holiday on Monday, you find out some other time during the week to get it done. So once a week for 45 minutes to 1 hour. Another important thing to consider is that the supervision room, wherever you sit, it should be quiet, it should be confidential, because you will be sharing maybe some information which needs to be protected. So make sure the room that you choose, it's a quiet area without any disruptions, and you meet every week 45 minutes to 1 hour. About the feedback, as I already said, the feedback should be affirming and corrective feedback, which means that obviously you involve uh, the things that your supervisor is doing really great. You talk about some coaching strategy, how they can make it better, and you also include some feedback on the evaluation feedback, meaning what are the things that need to be addressed, what are the things that need to be any concern that need to be addressed, or something that could be improvised. Another important thing that we expect that in your supervision you also discuss ethical and legal issues in school counseling. And when I say ethical and legal issues, I mean to say every school is unique in terms of the challenges they face. So based on whatever issues you think that might include a component of ethical and legal thing to it, make sure you point it out and you discuss about it to your supervisee. And finally, remember that our intern, your students, looks at you as an expert in the field. So, which means that you have to conduct yourself in a very professional manner. This whole relationship is very professional relationship between you and your supervisee. At times, when I say, as an expert, at times you may not have the answer to a question that your supervisor might ask. Sometimes even I have the situation with me, student asks question and I don't have the answer. And I'm very open about it, like, hey, I don't know the answer and I will find it and get back to you. So yes, if something like that happens, you can do that too. Let's talk further about expectation related to planning and organization. As I said earlier, that it's very important to develop a strong supervisory alliance, and you do that by talking about expectations from both the sides. So from your side as a site supervisor, what expectations you have from your supervisee, as well as having the conversation from supervisor's side, like what expectations they have in this relationship. So having those conversation at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of this relationship is very, very important. Also, I encourage all of you to discuss with your supervisor about your school, like what are the advantages, what are the various resources available for counselors that you can use. Uh, in the very beginning of the semester or the supervisory relationship, it's very important that you create a timeline. So when you meet your supervisees, uh, you know, talk about expectations from both sides, talk about the timeline, what time works for your supervisee and what time works for you. So having that discussion and coming up with the timings that so that you can provide supervision once a week, and also the activities that the supervisees are expected to do. So the planning is very, very important. So that is what we expect you to do in the very beginning of this whole process. Uh, Again, related to your supervisory alliance is encourage your supervisor to ask questions and work independently. And the reason why we want that, because after their internship experience, these students are going to work as an independent counselor. So we want them to have that experience during their internship. So encourage your supervisors to ask more questions, learn each and every aspect of functioning as a professional school counselor, and work independently. Uh, Also introduce your supervisor to the school community. because to work as an effective school counselor, it is very important to develop a strong relationship in the community, and how we can ensure success of our students by developing partnership, family, school, community partnership. So introducing our supervisee to those resources, those uh, aspect of school counseling is very, very important. Whenever you have any questions in terms of the supervision and any questions related to that, always refer to the handbook. And if you want to talk to me, you can always email me and we can have a conversation on it. As a site supervisor, I encourage all of you to use reflective practices. So what is reflective practices? In supervision, when a supervisee asks you a question, so instead of directly answering that question, you you invite the supervisee to reflect on those questions, and then gradually guide your supervisee to that answer. For example, if my supervisee asks me like, hey, I'm going to use this technique, I want to use this technique with my individual client. uh, I want to use, let's say, empty chair technique with my client in therapy. Should I do it or not? So instead of saying yes or no, I'm going to invite my supervisee answer some questions like, okay, why do you think this technique would be helpful for this particular client? Why you think it is appropriate at this moment? How you will determine that this technique is successful? Uh, why this technique? Why not other techniques? So you engage your supervisee in a conversation to think more deeply about what they are doing, why they are doing, and how they are doing. So I encourage all of you to use a lot of reflective practices when you are having the supervision meeting with your intern. Whenever you offer a feedback and after the feedback is delivered and processed, ask how the supervisee feels about that feedback. Oftentimes, I see like the intern, whenever you offer the feedback, they simply just accept it, even if they might have some questions, they may not like it. So having a conversation around, particularly when I offer a critical feedback, after the feedback is offered, accepted, I invite my supervisor to talk about, how was it? How was that? How did it feel to you hearing that you need to improve on certain things? How did you feel about it? So that is again a part of the reflective practices, and it's very, very helpful. If you have any concern, share it with the supervisee. Do not wait. Okay, let me wait for another 2, 3 weeks and then share it with. No. If you have any concern with any aspect of your intern's functioning as a school counselor, bring it up. And that is why we have weekly supervision meeting. So bring it up and talk through that, discuss about it. Do not postpone it. And if there is anything that needs an immediate attention, then do it then and there. For example, if there is a reporting, child abuse reporting needs to be done, the moment you hear it, you have to respond to it. You don't have to wait for the coming weekly supervision meeting, although you will discuss in detail in that meeting, but there are certain things that you need to respond as soon as possible. Toward the end of every supervision session, as I said earlier, that it's very important to get some feedback about how things are going in the supervision relationship. So always asking your supervisor, like, how was your experience, being here and discussing and processing the feedback? How was that experience? Do you think, is there anything else we can do better? Do you think you are being supported by me? So having 5 minutes time towards the end of the session on how both of you doing is important, and is it strengthen the supervisory alliance. Now let's switch gears again and talk about some supervision models. First of all, why we need to understand and have knowledge about various supervision models. Supervision models are important in the sense that they provide supervisors a framework to organize their practice, to understand what could be the best way to provide supervision services. So this is why having knowledge of supervision models is very, very important. And there are so many models, so I'm not going to talk about all the models. So I have selected two models, and these two models are very, very prominent and widely accepted and practiced by a majority of supervisors. The first model is called IDM, Integrated Developmental Model of Supervision. The basic premise of this model is a supervisor should edit and work according to the developmental level of their supervisee. And they they talk about three levels of developmental level of supervisee. They call it level 1, level 2, and level 3. The level 1 refers to beginners. So since you all be working with interns who are second year advanced students in their counseling program, so you will be working primarily with level 1 supervisees. And then they talk about level 2, which is like counselors who have a few years of experience in the field. And then level 3, counselors who have a lot of experience as practitioners. So here primarily you will be working with level 1. Now, based on the developmental level of your supervisee, you will understand the needs of your supervisee. For example, when you work with level 1 supervisee, uh, the beginner supervisee, they look more for a structure. So as a supervisor, you want to structure your sessions. Okay, we are going to do this thing in the first 15 minutes, and we'll do this thing in the next half an hour. So you try to organize, because when your session is pretty structured, it provides a sense of safety uh, to your supervisee. So as a beginner counselor, they are looking for sense of direction, sense of structure in their supervision experience. Another thing that this model talks about is how do you structure, what are the components that you focus on in your supervision practice. So they prescribe three components. One is motivation. So you focus on the level of motivation of your supervisee. The second component is autonomy. So based on the developmental level of your supervisee, how much autonomy in terms of their practice they are looking for, and how much you can do that. The third component is self-other awareness. So based on the developmental level, what are the goals you have set for your supervisor in terms of enhancing awareness about themselves and about their client? So these are the three components that you work with. So since you will be working with interns who are again students, so you will be focusing on obviously to motivate them, and you also want to build a sense of autonomy. We already talked about like encouraging a student to do things independently. Yes, you want to shadow, you want to provide direction. At the same time, you also want to develop a sense of autonomy in their practice, because after a couple of months later, they will be working as an independent school counselor. Self-other awareness is a very important component of therapeutic from therapeutic aspect context. So as a professional counselor, it's very important that you help your supervisee develop strong awareness about themselves as well as about their clients and during the therapy as well. So these are the three components that a supervisor focused on during their supervision. IDM also provide eight specific domains for supervisors so that they could measure the growth of their supervisee. And these 8 domains are intervention, skills, competence. So in terms of how competent your supervisee is in terms of using any interventions, how good they are in assessment techniques, how good they are in interpersonal skills, how well they can uh, conceptualize their client's case based on their theoretical orientation, how well they can work with multicultural clients. So how what is the level of their competency, multicultural competency. We also focus on theoretical orientation as well, because theoretical orientation is it's a process. So as a beginner counselor, uh, you may not have a very developed theoretical orientation, but as you get more supervision, you solidify and develop it further. Um, Treatment plans and goals. So how well your supervisee can formulate treatment plans and goals uh, with their clients. And finally, professional ethics. Obviously, this is an important component. So when you work with beginners, level one supervisees, you want to be more direct. You want to be more direct in terms of what they should do and what they should not do when it comes to professional ethics. Uh, but as the progresses more and more, obviously in real life, things are not black and white. So so as a supervisor, you work at different level with those experienced counselor. But since here, you all are going to work with interns, with students. So all the students, they are at level 1 development. So you have to keep in mind, like, okay, based on the developmental level of my supervisee, what are the needs of my supervisee? And based on the needs, you frame, you modify your supervision. So IDM focuses on the developmental level and the need of your supervisee. The second model that we are going to talk here is discrimination model of supervision. Again, discrimination model is widely used, widely accepted, and practiced by a wide array of clinical supervisors. According to this model, they have two important components. One is the role of a supervisor, and they describe three roles of a supervisor: the role of a teacher, role of a counselor, and role of a consultant. So these three roles, as a supervisor, I can assume these roles in a single session. So I can start my session by teaching my supervisee how to write a good lesson plan. So that is sort of a role I'm taking of a teacher. I'm making him learn how to develop a good lesson plan. So that is the role of a teacher. Later in the same session, I can talk to my supervisee about, uh, you know, I can invite my supervisee to reflect on their experience of using a particular intervention with their client. So my role is more sort of a counselor in that context. And then we can discuss about some ethical situation in the school. And that will be more sort of a role of a consultant. So in a single session, I am taking these different roles. So discrimination model says, as a supervisor, based on the need of your supervisee, you assume different roles. And these are three different roles: role of a teacher, a counselor, and consultant. In terms of the focus of your supervision, discrimination model talks about three kinds of focus. They talk about, as a supervisor, you focus on intervention skills of your supervisee, conceptualization skills, so whether your supervisee is able to case conceptualize effectively. And finally, the personalization is the focus of a supervisor, meaning that you help your supervisee internalize being more aware of themselves and learning those skills that they are trying to learn. So in discrimination model, you as a supervisor have three roles that you keep changing based on the need, and you focus on three areas: intervention, conceptualization, and personalization. So if you keep it together, three roles of a supervisor and three kinds of focus, it turns into nine ways a supervisor can work. For example, let's say if I assume the role of a teacher and my focus is on intervention, what would I do? So as a teacher, I can help my supervisee, like, teaching to use a particular technique from CBT. So that will be my role as a teacher, and my focus is on intervention. Let's say if I'm assuming the role of a teacher and my focus is on conceptualization. So I can watch recordings and then critique it to help my supervisee identify, let's say, cognitive distortions in the client. So that is my role of a teacher, helping my client develop more of conceptualization skills. Let's take another example. If I am assuming the role of a counselor and I'm focused on intervention, then I'm helping my supervisee, let's say, process why skill usage with a specific client is different. So you see, based on the need of your supervisee, you focus on you focus on three component. It could be intervention, conceptualization, personalization, and also you assume based on the need of your supervisee either of these three roles, either a teacher, counselor, or consultant. So these three roles and three focuses of your supervision can happen in a single session depending on the need of your supervisee. So these two models that we just discussed, you can use it whatever works best for you. I encourage you to explore it further. If you want more information, feel free to email me and we can set up a meeting and talk in detail about it. Now let's switch gears and talk about the activities and that we expect our supervisees to conduct and gain more experience during their internship. at the site. So there are 5 areas that we want our intern to gain experience. So I would highly recommend that you work with your supervisee, create a timeline, and to ensure that you cover these 5 areas. The first one is academic, career, and personal social development. The second one is curriculum design and delivery. The third one is data-driven practice. The fourth one is program evaluation, and the finally individual and group counseling. So these are the 5 areas we want our student to focus and gain more experience as an intern. So you can work with your intern and make sure that you cover these 5 areas during the semester so that they gain experience from all these areas. Here are a few more advice on how you can schedule your weekly supervision meeting. Focus on specific issues that are occur in schools and the work performed by the supervisee. So whatever work the supervisee has done in the previous week, you can focus on those skills and the work they have done during a supervision meeting. If there is anything that has happened during the week in the school, you can bring up those things as well and discuss around those issues as well. Uh, we already talked about it. Provide affirmative and corrective feedback. Yes, uh, positive feedback so that we can boost the morale and motivation of our students, and at the same time also make sure that we provide corrective feedback where we talk about things that they are doing well and the areas of improvement at the same time. Finally, acknowledge the developmental level of your supervisee and celebrate their growth. Uh, every student is unique in the sense that there might be differences in terms of their developmental level. So when you work with your supervisee, uh, you should try to understand where they are at this moment, and then based on their needs and based on the goals you have set together, you work forward, you work collaboratively with them. Now let's talk about the activities for this semester that I have given to all students in my internship class. So the interns with whom you are going to work with, they are supposed to do all these activities. Number one is individual and group counseling. So intern will run a counseling group this semester at their internship site. Uh, they will work with their site supervisor, you, to identify an appropriate topic based on school data. They will also work with clients, students individually. So I encourage you to have a meeting with your intern and help them plan these activities and provide support to them. The second activity that I have given to them is annual administrator conference. So the interns are required to complete an annual administrator conference based on their internship experience this semester. Uh, and then they have to write a reflection on the process of developing this document. So they are generally this annual administrator conference is developed and presented with the school administrator, but I don't want them to do with the administrator of the school. So what I want them to do is to work with the site supervisor and develop this form and write a reflection about the experience of developing this document. So as a site supervisor, you can help your intern develop annual administrator conference form. The third activity that I have given to them is closing the gap action plan and result report. So there are 2 activities. One is closing the gap action plan, and the second part of the same activity is sharing the result. So I have instructed my students, so your intern will get in touch with you and you can collaborate with them, help them develop this action plan and measure the results and share it with in the class. The next activity is classroom lessons. So there, your intern is going to develop classroom lessons and deliver it to them. So they are supposed to do it in this semester. The next one is professional development activities. So your intern will participate in some kind of professional developmental activities. We already had uh, we told them about First Coast Counseling Association, Florida School Counselor Association. They can submit proposals, they can do presentations there, and there are other stuff that they can do as part of their professional development activity. And finally, your intern is supposed to do a leadership experience in his school counseling, so they can develop some presentation training program for staff development, advisory counseling meeting they can participate, or they can do presentation on school counseling, uh, and the SOAR program for undergraduate student at the University of North Florida. So these are the 6 activities that I have asked my students. All the interns needs to finish it and submit it towards the end of this semester. And they will get in touch with you so you can get more information about these activities and the expectations. Another important expectation from site supervisor is to help their supervisee develop case conceptualization skills. So this is really, really important for professional school counselors, that you develop your own counseling approach, and based on your own counseling theory or approach, you develop the ability or skill to conceptualize a case. So this skill is very important, and we want our students to learn these skills. As a supervisor, you are expected to help your supervisee develop these skills. To help supervisees develop case conceptualization skills, it's very important to understand that as a supervisor, you first of all help them understand and develop their own counseling theory. So as you know, there are various approaches to therapy. There's CBT, Gestalt, person-centered, narrative therapy. So all these different approaches to therapy. So uh, you can help, we expect you to help your supervisee develop their case conceptualization skills based on the theory that they follow. So let's do a brief recap of these theories. Uh, Although I know like you already know more about these different approaches to therapy. So starting with CBT, in summary, we know like this CBT is about the premise behind this whole approach is that the problem that the client brings in to therapy is caused by their wrong thinking or their unhealthy way of linking, distorted, thinking. So what do you do when you adopt this approach? What you do, since you try to help client change their distorted thinking, and when you change their distorted thinking, automatically the behavior of your client changes. So that's briefly about CBT. Gestalt therapy, uh, it the focus of Gestalt therapy is basically helping client develop more and more awareness, present moment awareness. So there are they use different techniques, empty chair technique or sensation technique, or these different techniques to help client gain awareness of what is going on right now. So that is the focus of Gestalt therapy. In person-centered approach of therapy, the basic premise is, as a counselor, what you focus on is create the core therapeutic conditions in the therapy, and the client will automatically grow if we as counselors are able to create those core conditions. Now, what are those core conditions? Unconditional positive regard. So you as a counselor demonstrate this unconditional positive regard towards your client. Empathic understanding is another core condition. So you try to understand what it means to be in the shoe of your client through therapeutic understanding, and you communicate those understanding to your client. And the third core condition is congruence. So you try to be real and genuine in the session with your client. If there is anything else that bothers you again and again, you bring it up. For example, if you don't like your client, if you get irritated with your client again and again, you bring it up rather than hide it. So you try to be real and genuine with your client. So these are the three core conditions. And according to person-centered approach, if as a counselor you are able to create these core conditions, the client will automatically grow. So that's about these three conditions, three therapeutic approaches to therapy. Now let's move to some postmodern approaches to therapy. So the first one is called narrative therapy. Now, narrative therapy, the basic premise of narrative therapy is how we tell the stories of our lives and how the stories we tell to others, they determine who we are. So basically what we always tell stories to ourselves and to others. The way we internalize what has happened in our life, that determines our behavior. So as a narrative therapist, what you do, you help the client edit, rewrite those internalized stories. So there are various techniques that narrative therapists use. One of them, which is one of the most popular technique, is called externalization techniques. So in externalization, what you do, you help the person understand that the person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. So you help client separate himself, herself from the problem. And to do that, you use a language which is called externalizing language, where like you try to name the problem. And when you name the problem, it becomes sort of separate from the person. And then you you try to help client edit those stories by asking specific questions. So narrative therapy works on these basic premises. And then there is solution-focused approach to therapy. Now let me tell you, solution-focused approach is very suitable for school counselors. Reason being, it is a brief therapy, uh, which makes a lot of sense in the context of working in a professional school, in a school setting. So in schools, you are responsible, maybe you are the only counselor on 300, 400, 500 students. Now, if you adopt an approach to therapy, which is long-term therapy, let's say person-centered or some other approaches which are very long-term in nature, that is not very productive for school counselors. And that is why we encourage our students to learn more about solution-focused brief therapeutic approaches. These approaches are very suitable for clients with mild level of uh, concerns, mental health concerns, and they are brief in nature. So as a school counselor, it fits into our way of functioning and the workload we carry. In solution-focused approach, uh, you focus on constructing solutions rather than focusing on the problems. Unlike other approaches where you want to go into the deep into the past of the client and go deeper into the roots of the problem. You don't do that in solution focused. You simply focus on present and future. So the problem is the problem. We are not interested in understanding what is the root of the problem. What we are interested as solution focused therapist is how we can solve the problem. So focusing more on the solution. Now, when you focus on the solution part, your role as a counselor is not about, I'm an expert, so I'm going to tell you what to do, what is the possible solution of a problem. No. As a solution focused, I'm going to help my client find solutions for themselves. So I'm more like a facilitator rather than a solution provider. So these are a few approaches to therapy, and as a site supervisor, you can help your supervisee develop their case conceptualization skills based on whatever is their therapeutic approach, whatever theory they follow. As a site supervisor, what are the topics that you want to cover in your supervision meetings, in your supervision work with your supervisee? Uh, as I already said, obviously, whatever your supervisee wants to talk about in the supervision, you will focus on that. You will address those concerns of your supervisee. However, I recommend these 5 areas to focus on during your supervision meeting with your supervisee. First of all, reflect on their design of classroom guidance activities. So yes, based on your experience and your observation of your supervisee, you will provide suggestions, you will provide feedback on how to design effective classroom guidance activities and how to implement those. The second area is applicable use of counseling theories in a school setting. So based on the theoretical orientation of your supervisee, you help them understand the context and how effectively those interventions can be used in a school setting. The third one is explore with your intern their thoughts about professional development. So again, it's about what are the goals they have set for themselves, what are the tasks they want to accomplish during their supervision experience. So focusing on those are also important during your supervision meeting. Fourth one, discuss the use and comfort with technology and applicable computer program. Obviously, technology has become a part and parcel of our professional life, personal life as well. So in a school setup, whatever technology you are using as a school counselor, we want you to help your intern learn those technologies and those uh, things to use in delivering counseling services. And finally, uh, in supervision, I want you to work with them how their work aligns with the national school counseling standards. So, and this is really important because whatever work you are doing, it has to be aligned with the national the ESCA model that we use in professional school counseling program. So this is what I expect and hope that you will focus on during your supervision meetings with your supervisee. We are towards the end of our training session here. So finally, let's talk about some of the do's and don'ts, some of the mistakes that site supervisors sometimes make and how we can avoid it. So one of the common mistakes that I have seen is uh, sometimes site supervisors only provide corrective feedback. Uh, which is okay. Corrective feedback is part of important part of supervision practice, but at the same time, it's important that we provide affirmative feedback as well. So focusing on both sides, like what the things they are doing good and what are the areas that needs improvement. So keeping it together is very, very important. Another thing is limiting the student to just shadowing site supervisor during the school day. Although it's effective in terms of like when your intern shadow you, they learn, but at the same time that is not very effective. I would say uh, working with your intern, like the projects, groups, clients for them to work with, so identifying with those things as well are also very important. So uh, invite your supervisee to shadow you, but at the same time you want to work with them on the projects, groups, and clients, and support them with those tasks as well, not only just doing the shadowing the whole day. Another thing, important thing is is provide consistent supervision. So as I said earlier, we expect you to have at least 45 minutes to 60 minutes of supervision a week, and that has to happen like in a quiet place and without any disruptions. So make sure you do that. Uh, and if there is any concern with university faculty or let's say with student or any concern, I would say that discuss with the student first, and if you think you cannot resolve it, then you can simply email me and we can talk about it. So these are a few do's and don'ts about it. Well, this is the last slide. Here are a few resources I can see that you can use for more information if you want. And if you want more information on supervision, obviously we can talk about it. Feel free to email me. It was wonderful talking about this supervision with all of you, and I look forward to working all of you this semester. Have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.